So there were a lot of experiences in these labs. And what we did was also a live-in lab evaluation, because we wanted a learning evaluation. And we did the labs of the first round. They happened in 2019. So they were face-to-face workshops. People co-created together. Then we had some learnings for the second round of the labs. We wanted to improve the workshops a bit more, and then Corona happened. So what we learned between the learnings and the labs in the second round was how to do it online, and it really worked well. We had to think quick, and we had to think a lot between March and May, because the second round of the labs happened in the summer 2020. But it really worked. It worked really well to think, how can we change it to online? And we had the lower income families. They worked together as a whole family, guided by video workshops and small interviews and instruction videos. This worked really well. And we made a second experience in the whole process, how to do it online, how to do co-creation online. So it was interesting. It would have been a lie that we have planned this. It was really the pandemic which forced us to do it. But we did some methods to evaluate this. We did observations, guided interviews, participant surveys on the face-to-face workshops, a feedback questionnaire for the online workshops. We did a lot of interviews to reach the perspective of the companies, and also evaluated the labs from in between by the lab leaders. So these were the steps, and I want to also share our findings and learnings. It's just a quick look on it. All the people who were involved, the lead users and the citizens, really had a positive experience, and they perceived the participation as really good and inspiring. And the participants were not only able to articulate their needs, so all people generated ideas together, the company with the citizens. What we also learned is co-creation needs time. It's not a new learning, but even a 3 years funded project setting up the workshops is a good time, but not time enough. So you need an even longer process to do a series of workshops. And I think 3 years is not enough. And when you think about the mandate, you should be really clear what could be the result of the process before you start the labs. We thought a lot about this, and we have one barrier, which is not so easy when you do co-creation of users together with industry. We have to think about products and patterns. So co-creation should be till the end, but companies, and Anna talked about this in the last presentation in the beginning, is outputs should be open as possible, but it's a company, and they want to make a business out of the products. So this is something you should think from the beginning of the workshops. What happens with the ideas and what happens with the innovations? So this is what you should think about from the beginning. And this is my thank you. I just want to advertise 2 documents we produced in the last month, which is the co-creation toolkit, where we have a lot of learnings from the labs in it, and how to work with such a approach. And we made a paper about inclusiveness, which will come soon. So please check our website if you are interested in the process. So that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that will generate a lot of questions when we get to the Q&A session. But let me move straight on to our second speaker, Dr. Luis Fiallo, who is going to talk to us about a decade developing energy engineering solutions. And Luis is from the University of Evora and has been involved in a whole series of research projects with the EU. But rather than go through the detail of that, I'll hand straight over to Luis. So if Luis, you'd like to share your screen, then we can move on, please.
So hi, good morning. Thank you, Martin, for the introduction. I will present a brief presentation about our experience about working with the society and for the society. So I work in the renewable energies chair. This is a research unit within the University of Évora in Portugal. So we celebrate 10 years this year. So a decade of work. We are quite a young team, as you can see in the photo. So our average age is quite young, but we have doing some quite important work. So right now we are the national research infrastructure in solar energy concentration. So this is a very important research infrastructure that should be and is open to the society. And we are in Évora. It's as you can see in the map, in the south of Portugal, mainly because this is a very good area and within the European Union to produce and to generate solar energy. And that's why we are focused on solar energy applications, but also on energy storage systems. So I'm the head of the group of the photovoltaic systems and electric energy storage systems. And I'm going to present you today mainly three main examples that I hope can inspire you to work towards the open science. Just to remind you the overall challenge that we face today, I think it's always important to remind everyone of this. Our carbon dioxide emissions are still growing. As you can see, these figures from January 2021 are still growing. We cannot even see any kind of impact or effects of the COVID there. So this is a really big challenge that we are tackling today. We are right now with +1 degree, and we should work quickly to stop this. So we should never lose the focus on this, and so that you can have a tangible feel of this challenge, I have introduced there our current emissions of CO2, about 55 gigatons. And the challenge is to turn this into zero. So it's not to reduce, it's not to minimize, it's to turn into zero, net zero emissions of CO2. So this is our main challenge today as a human species in the planet. Our research unit is working towards this to avoid carbon emissions as much as possible. And we have developed a large research infrastructure, as you can see here. Full-scale systems. We work mainly in full scale and in real operation systems, as you can see here. So we have from photovoltaic systems for pumping, as you can see on the top right, but also floating PV systems to provide energy to the grid, but also solar thermal systems to provide either heat for industry, but also heat for energy, for electricity production, and also energy storage, because we should be able to storage these renewable energies. So we have a lot of lithium and post-lithium technologies that we are testing. One of the main examples that I bring you today, and this is a national funded project. It's called DNA project. It's already finished, but this is a very good example of how do we work with and for science, science for society. So we have developed 14 stations network of weather stations, as you can see in the pictures, mainly in the south of Portugal, to do solar resource assessment. So we used these weather stations deployed all over the southern part of Portugal. But to do this, we have established some partnerships with companies, with public administration, with other institutions, in order to install these stations in their facilities, but also using their own citizens or employees to do the maintenance work of this, to achieve high quality data. So the cleaning tasks, the checking if the calibration is right, it's all done by voluntaries, and they give us a very helpful way of doing this in managing this endeavor. So these allow us to produce the kind of graphic that you can see on the right, a solar resource assessment that we publicly and free provide to companies, to citizens, enabling them with more information about this and their own projects. This is a regional and national funded project, but also European projects can work like this, as you can see. This is another European project. It's already ongoing, positive. It's focused on positive energy districts. We are working with this product. This is a second life battery from batteries from electric cars that get a second life as a Lego-like product. This is a product from a German company that we are testing, a pre-commercial product. So we are testing this and characterizing this in order to achieve our own models of degradation, but also testing real use case scenarios, as you can see on the right, that will be the use case scenarios for the end users. In order to validate this and to fine-tune this, we will deploy this in 10 residential end users, and they will give us their own feedback, their own insights about how this should work, and if we are aligned with their own needs and desires regarding this kind of products. So this is another way of working regarding, in this case, an actual product that will become a commercial product in the future. Another example, of course, it comes from the Greco Project. It's also a European project, funded project. In here, the challenge was to obtain data from old PV modules. As you can see on the graph on the left, old PV modules are quite rare and quite scarce. So this is a challenge for scientists. And how can we obtain data about old PV modules regarding their aging, but also their faults, their defects? So we have done in Greco an open call for old PV modules in Europe. This was a very successful open call. We have engaged 110 PV installations and users in Europe. And after a final data selection, we have recollected data from more than 110 megawatts of photovoltaic installations, but also from 10 different PV manufacturers. And this enabled us, with this collaboration of the society, to develop and validate our own models, as you can see on the right. In this case, it's a degradation model for the PV system. And we have fully validated this with real data from the end users' facilities. And this is another example on how can you achieve this societal collaboration and also achieve a research objective within these European funded projects. So I think these are the main three examples. I hope that they can inspire you to work with and for the society. You have here my contacts. Feel free to contact me if you have any additional question later on the future. And I'm open to any further questions, of course.
Thank you very much, Luis. We will come back to questions at the end. If I can now move to our third speaker, and thank you everybody for keeping to time. It's pretty good so far. Our third speaker is Colin Hagen from the Danish Board of Technology Foundation, who is going to speak to us on citizens and industrial technologies. How can key enabling technologies be developed together with citizens. And Catherine has also been involved in a number of European projects, including Reconfigure and Sockets. So without any further ado, let me hand over to Catherine to tell you about her work. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm Catherine and Colin Hagen, and I'm working for the Danish Board of Technology. I'm here as the coordinator of the Sockets project. Sockets for societal engagement with key enabling technologies. Boom, 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 boom.
Are you able to advance the slides?
Yeah, there it was. Correct. I'm here to share some thoughts about the citizen engagement in industry based on the Socket project. But I also have with me some experience from another Horizon 2020 project, Reconfigure, actually doing this together with Luisa Barbosa, who is also in this session. And in Reconfigure, we are just finishing the project, and one of our learnings is we are working with to study real-life quadruple helix collaborations, and one of the results or the learnings is that it is still difficult to find cases out there that involve civil society and citizens as a genuine innovation partner. Some of the learnings is results is that our collaboration partners find they lack tools and methods to integrate or to involve the citizens. So this is maybe you recognize it from your own projects, but this is the gap that we would like to fill in Sockets. So I'll just continue to talk about the Sockets. In Sockets, we are 6 consortia partners and 3 third-link parties. That is the science museums. We started in October last year, and it's a 3-year-old project, so we are still a quite young project. Our aim is to build bridge between society and the key enabling technologies, because we recognize that the key enabling technologies have this great potential to transform society. So I think it sounds like we are rather much in line with Reiner's project. So I really have to study Reiner's project and the living innovation. I will do that when we close today. We want to facilitate co-creation amongst the citizens, industry, researchers, authorities, and others. And we want to enable the technologies to be developed in the dialogue with citizens and society. We work in this innovation ecosystems, and we have 6 case studies around Europe, and the action areas are circular economy, e-health, and industrial automation systems. So together in these test cases, we will explore, we will test, and we will develop some tools and methods for better and for more co-creation. Some of our projects will be a toolbox with good practices and methods for co-creation, and also a series of living exhibitions done by the science museums. When we work with societal engagement, we have a special focus on the citizen engagement. We do that to involve the broadest possible range of actors in the innovation process. And in this whole landscape of citizen engagement, you know, there are several methods and positions. And we have our primary focus on dialogue and then co-creation to strengthen this two-way collaboration and innovation. We use societal engagement or citizen engagement as a broad term to cover all these different degrees of influence and of agency. And we do that because we have a normative framework. We really want to strive towards this socially robust innovation, as we all want to do in the RRI. We want to the two-way exchange of knowledge and perspectives and concerns, and also to enhance co-creation as the two-way production of innovation that is based on these alignments of knowledge and concerns. I say will because we are still a young project. We are still in the early 80s of the Sockets project. We are right now setting out our test cases. So we do not really have results or concrete experiences, but we have a lot of questions and a lot of reflections raised that we address in our actions. And one of them is the perception of the citizen. And we embrace the citizen not only as an individual and an end user involved in some product testing, but as a representative for the public values and the societal needs and the common good. What is the benefit of engaging citizens at all, and what is the motivation and the drivers of the industry to engage the society and citizens in new ways? Of course, those are very obvious questions, and we have explored it for some of our first deliverables based on the interviews with the ecosystem actors. And it shows that the stakeholder contact we have, that they have an interest to participate for the reasons of more cooperation and more knowledge sharing. They want to develop strategies and good practices, and also want to take the opportunity to showcase innovation. And I was also inspired by listening to Rainer that they expressed that their industry partners also had great interest in participating in that project. So we see also among some of our industry stakeholders interviewed that they have some doubts about this whole engagement of citizens and what is the benefits. We know that industries are already engaged in the CSR, in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we want in Sockets to develop methods that add value to all these current practices in the industry. Then we also wonder what kind of tools are the most useful, because there are a lot of toolboxes and toolkits already developed up there, and of course we want to have an impact and we want to create something useful. We do believe that a toolbox that is co-created over time with the relevant ecosystem stakeholders will be useful. Then finally, there are significant cultural and national differences. We have analyzed that cultural conditions for the public engagement in the countries of our test cases, and we are aware that there are many differences, and the question is now how it affects the engagement tools and methods that we want to develop. So at this stage of the project, I have maybe more questions than I have answers, but if we meet at another conference in some years' time, I'm sure I have more answers than questions. So that is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. I have lots of questions for you when you have those answers.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you're illustrating very nicely is that once you start to try and change the status quo, you get a negative reaction from the established methods that people are using. People are fearful of trying something different, but we'll come back to that when we get into the Q&A session. I want to move on now to our last speaker to give us as much time as possible for discussion, and it's Luisa Barbosa from the University of Pompeu Fabra, who is heavily involved in Greco and a number of other EU research projects. And Louise is on her LinkedIn site, she outlines that she's an ambassador for democratic participation, open science, and the concept of responsible research and innovation, currently coordinating the public engagement in Scientific, Medical, and Environmental Communication at UPF Barcelona School of Management. So over to Luisa, who I've worked with over the last 2 or 3 years. And we look forward to your presentation, Luisa.
Thank you very much, Martin. And thank you all for being here. So what I would like to do in the next minutes is just to show you very generally kind of a model that we have developed at our center, which is the Study Center on Science, Communication and Society of the University Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. That kind of expresses the different levels for science communication and public engagement in science. And then I would like to provide some experiences from the field of health and energy as part of the work in the project Greco. So to start, the reason why we are all here as part of an open science conference is because, of course, open science is based on cooperative work, but also on the dissemination of knowledge. And I like very much this metaphor that is used by the network of young European research universities that sees open science as a tree in which the leaves are collaboration, participation, citizen science, and co-creation. So public engagement is really one of the pillars of open science, and probably I would be bold enough to say that this is the pillar that is less explored by researchers in many fields. This is not a new stuff. It already for years, some of the well-renowned scientific journals have talked about this, of researchers engaging with the public, with the general public, with civil society. And then as part of this, we have developed what we call the ladder of engagement in science. It relates a little bit with this graph that Catherine just showed regarding agency and influence of different methods. We based to develop this ladder on a paper that was published in the late 60s already, and that was talking about the different levels of citizen participation in democracy, in politics. But we think it well applies to science communication and public engagement. And this is a ladder that I have to say, it does not imply that something is better than other stuff. It just relates or informs about the levels of involvement. So at the bottom of the ladder, we have very little to no information, to no communication. And on the top of the ladder, we have very active citizen participation. And we can choose in which step of the ladder to sit according to the goals of the project, to the phases of the research or knowledge production process. So again, if we go at the bottom, we will find cases in which no information is provided, and this could happen for any specific reason. Then we will move to one-way communication with newsletters, mass media, open days, for instance. Get some more dialogue with social media that already allows some interaction, digital interaction. And then we move into what the field that we have seen in the previous presentations, which is informal public engagement, formal public engagement, or very active citizen participation. So in these cases, we have dialogues between researchers and citizens or other stakeholders, other actors that relate to research and innovation. In the case of informal public engagement, it's not common that this dialogue will result on a decision-making process to the level of policies or regulation, which is the difference with the formal engagement. And then at the very top of the ladder, which is not best, I have to say, we have, for instance, processes in which citizens participate actively into the knowledge production. And I would say that the most well-known for now process in which we can do that is using citizen science. So I will give some examples on these different steps, but we have also seen already quite some in the previous presentations. So the first example comes from the field of health. This is a project, a EU-funded project that already ended quite some years ago, so in 2016, but it's still very relevant. We coordinated it, so at the center, and it was exploring neuroenhancement and the perceptions, the concerns, and the expectations that society had on this very controversial topic. I would say it was quite an early project that approached this idea of responsible research and innovation. And to do that, we organized a series of different actions or events or strategies to communicate with or engage citizens. One of them was using what is called Play Decide. It's a game, a card game, in which the cards have certain statements about legal issues, ethical issues, in this case of non-therapeutical neuroenhancement. So of course, this was a very controversial issue, using devices or technologies to improve cognitive abilities and not for non-therapeutical reasons. But it allowed to have very informed discussions and debates and to reach at the end kind of a consensus about or a clear position or opinion about the topic. So this is one way in which you can do engagement. Another one that is coming from the same project was a citizen debate. It was kind of massive event or a bigger event that was organized in museums around different cities and countries. This is the case that was done. So one case was done in Barcelona, another one in the north of Spain. And the topic was the same. So how new technologies it was about new technologies that aim at increasing these cognitive abilities. Then there were experts discussing the issue from different perspectives, and the public will raise their questions, raise their concerns, and at the end make a voting with with an electronic voting. So this allowed really to explore what were these opinions and these concerns coming from the public regarding this topic, and then feed this into the research and policy recommendations. Another example on this level is coming from our project, Greco, that is one of the main characters of this conference today. And it was a series of dialogue talks that are called World Cafes, in which different countries, actually it was 5 different countries, that explored this idea of solar energy and how we can promote the use of solar energy, and what are the main concerns regarding new technologies, what is it expected from the research and innovation on the field. And again, this is a way to just get information to feed it into the research process. Regarding this very top step of the ladder, which I just mentioned, that is citizen science. This is a process that we also developed or went through in the project Greco, and we're very proud of this process because we identified a gap in citizen science process projects on the energy field, and therefore we designed a participatory process to come up with an initiative in citizen science on the field, and this gave the result of Generation Solar. This is the name of our citizen science process, and I will just go briefly through the steps of it, or through the process of it in 5 steps, because I like steps. Okay, so first, we identify scientific activities that requested input from citizens. So we asked around 100 professionals, how could citizens support research, photovoltaic research. We compiled this information on a very interesting document, and we took this information to a second step, which was a co-creation event, thinking or inspired in a hackathon. So for those of you who don't know what a hackathon is, it's just a sprint, so like a marathon that tries to solve a challenge in a very short amount of time. So our challenge in this case was to come up with a citizen science initiative for Greco. We provided this information coming from this research fields or questions that will very benefit, that has had any request and will benefit from an interaction with society. And then we got 61 participants from 16 countries. At the end of 1 week, very intense week, it was a week-long hackathon, we received 12 practicable plans for citizen science projects in the energy field. These 12 plans were taken to the third step, which was the evaluation by a multidisciplinary committee according to 5 criteria, for instance, the creativity, the feasibility, the response to the challenge, and we chose 1 proposal that will be developed in the project. The winning proposal came from Marta Victoria, which is a professor at Aarhus University in Denmark, and she proposed to create an open database of rooftop solar installations. So with her proposal, we came together with a tech company to make the development of this proposal. We modified certain aspects according to a working group, and we came up with a web app that serves actually as an open database of solar photovoltaic installations, so the specific type of solar installations, and the database is compatible with one that is commonly used by researchers working on energy modeling and other fields, which is the Open Power System Data Initiative. The idea with this platform, so Generation Solar, is to also allow for the creation of a community that is either interested or already engaged in the production of energy derived from solar power. And we try to include some aspects of gamification to keep spreading the word. Finally, and this is the step we're now on, we started the dissemination, the data collection, and data use of the platform of Generation Solar. So right now we have 136 installations located mainly in Portugal and Spain, but we have some representation in other European countries. This represents in a very rough and non-academic estimation, around 2,000 to 3,000 tons of CO2 savings if compared to a model based on fossil fuels. And we are really thinking forward on ensuring the sustainability of the platform, increasing its reach so it can become a very powerful tool for research, but also for the creation of a solar energy community. And with that, I'm getting to the end. I would like to highlight or to end up with a reflection and a couple of tools. So the reflection is about if public engagement is an easy path. So I brought this article that I like a lot. It has already some years, but it's very valid. It's coming from the Oldham Institute in the UK, and they explore this idea of public communication, public communication of science, if it is a waste of time. So they explore some of the good reasons to engage with public engagement, if I may say. But I hope we have provided very good reasons in these talks. But they also explore the main barriers or limitations that researchers feel when dealing with public engagement. And basically, we could summarize it to time, lack of time. It will be lack of time, to not getting enough incentives to do public engagement, and for instance, fear of not being able to really communicate their complex science to non-academic publics. So I really think it is a matter of working in groups, a matter of providing training and acquiring skills for communication and engagement. And as I told you, this has already some years, but actually last year, a colleague of mine published this article and this report coming from the project Concise about barriers and incentives of scientists to engage into science communication and public engagement. So, and the results are basically the same as the other article mentions. Okay, so just to finalize, for those of you who didn't listen, we provided a practical guide on open science in Greco. It talks about public engagement, so there is one chapter entirely devoted to solve questions that researchers have regarding this relationship with society, but it has also many other different things. And for those of you who are really interested in this, there is this Engage 2020 catalog that allows you to find methodologies to engage with different publics according to the objectives you have. So with that, I would like to finalize and thank you for your attention. Look forward to the discussion later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luisa. We have got a chat box where people can put questions, and I will put those questions forward to the speakers. And we are starting to see one or two questions coming in. So if you put your questions in the chat box, that will help me. I think I wanted to start, however, and I'll phrase it, the question like this, which is that if we look at open science and we look at citizen science, which is one of my passions, one of the things that it opens up for researchers is a huge number of potential people who will support your research project. And if you get this right, the scale of engagement that can be achieved by researchers using open science principles and citizen science is mind-blowing. And we're starting to see, it's very early days, but we're starting to see examples where scientists have reached out in using open science principles and citizen science during the COVID-19 pandemic, to a point where individual projects have been blown away by the level of support they've received. And I'll just quote you one example, which is the COVID-19 symptom tracker app from King's College London, supported by an industrial company called Zoe. They have now got 4.6 million people who have put data into their systems, and they regularly have 1 million participants every day logging information. They have logged 1 million symptom reports on the vaccines that are being used to challenge COVID, and they now have a string of research papers in the research journals. But what for me has been the real powerful driver in that particular project is the way that they have driven the policy process. It has become so big that the science is driving change in the policy process. So they've identified early signs of the disease that nobody else had picked up. They've been able to provide information on where the greatest risks are. And for me, it's just a classic example of a totally different approach to research that was initially resisted at the start by governments in many instances, and also by some of the research institutions. So my question to the panel of speakers, and for you all to think about, is how do we overcome the entrenched resistance to change that comes with bringing in the whole principles of open science, citizen science, responsible research and innovation? What are your top 3 tips as to how to get past the barriers that exist and that you would like to share with the audience? And perhaps I might start with Raina and work down the list of speakers, so you each have a little bit of time to prepare. and let me have your thoughts on that. And I'll then look at the other questions coming in from our audience. So over to Rainer first.
So I'm not sure to define just 3 barriers, but I want to talk about a field. So at least you have to start, but in the field of living, we had the companies. We were part of the project, and we said, okay, now you have to talk to the citizens, but it's really bottom up, and I see this as a problem in a lot of projects. We don't have the open doors that it's real when we talk about citizen science. That it was not bottom up; it was top down. So we need some more changes, funding, bottom up initiatives. I think we are really thinking from a researcher's perspective, and it's right because we need to be funded. So I saw the action catalog. I was also part of the Engage project, so I was really happy to see this action catalog. But you have a lot of methods. If you have planned methods, you can really start from asking the citizens where to start. But you need some kind of funding for this really open science. And from my perspective, I always work in top-down projects because we need to be funded too. We can't start asking the citizen, what's your question? So it's easy to say it's about funding, but I see it as a big problem, especially in German funding as well.
I'll feed something back in straight away, if I may, and that is that example I gave you was very interesting because the project was started in a week. I mean, it's quite amazing the speed with which it went, and the people that started the project funded it themselves. So in other words, it was funded from within the institutions and from their industrial partner. They took a risk. By the time they were about a month in, they had 1 million participants. I mean, it was so fast, it was so rapid because they were delivering something people wanted. So that's the bottom-up element, if you like, of this. They had so many people participate in the first week that all the servers failed. They weren't big enough, they couldn't cope with the demand. They started to run out of funding because they obviously only had seed funding to start the program. So they appealed to the people taking part to fund the project. They raised £1 million, £1.25 million in a week from their participants. And they didn't do this once, they did this twice. And at the time, the government would not fund the project. The government was so embarrassed by the scale of what was happening that the government now funds the project with another £3 million in this case. So there's a nice tension here that if you get a bottom-up demand for an open science, citizen science project, and you can find the seed corn funding to start, if you're meeting the expectations of the community of society, if you work with them, will find a way to fund you, which is a very interesting concept and one I don't think we've fully explored enough. I'll give you one other example, and then I'll move on to one of the other speakers. Is in the project area of air quality in Antwerp, in Belgium, and in the Netherlands, the participants fund the research themselves. In other words, they've set an infrastructure up for monitoring air quality, and the people who live there are so concerned about it that they buy their own monitors, and they've expanded the monitoring systems in that part of the world to be the densest in Europe. And now that is a phenomenal achievement for the researchers involved. But yes, they have to learn new skills. So when you're looking at the barriers, one of the things for the speakers to perhaps think about and answer is how do you get the right skills in people to enable these sorts of things to happen? So let's move on. Let's ask Louise if you'd like to give your thoughts on those areas.
Yeah, I can maybe give you some specific tips that could work. I think many scientists are afraid of empowering citizens or making them part of their research, but that could be sometimes the only way to achieve some goals in the scientific endeavor. So, for instance, our solar assessments network we are dealing with expensive equipments, but we have made the people, we have challenged the people to become in charge of them. So the maintenance tasks or communicating with us about them, it has empowered people, and people feel proud the citizens feel proud to become part of it and to be in charge of such part of our scientific network. So I think scientists sometimes are afraid to involve the citizens, and we should not be afraid. We should challenge them to be part of it, but be an active part. And that could be a very nice tip, but not only scientists and citizens, but also institutions, other entities, companies. We need them to collaborate sometimes to specific challenges like this one. I think this could be a very nice tips for someone trying to implement this.
Thank you. Some really good thoughts there. Catherine, your thoughts, please.
Yes, thank you, and great to collect ideas to overcome barriers and to somehow together shape this silver key to to overcome all the barriers. I think it's not only a question of funding, but also openness and courage with the societal actors and the stakeholders that we want to work with their mindset. Sometimes when I'm frustrated that I meet barriers or things go too slowly or I meet resistance, then I just think of the Ice Age and the little steps over time that will change the big picture. So I think when we learn from each other in these projects and we build on each other's experiences and we continue our purposes, I think we inspire the societal actors to experiment more and to integrate these approaches. So yeah, that was another answer.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Let me go to Louisa. We'll get one more question in after this, I think, with the time that we've got left. Louisa, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, okay, first I agree with Catherine. So to overcome reluctance to change, I think we first have to be patient. I think changes take time. So the different situations that we embrace or that we face are really leading us to change. As the pandemic, you presented this very iconic case of the COVID symptom tracker. So changes are taking place. But then, as this is, I'm not too happy with this answer, I go with 2 or 3 more strategies that I think could work. One would be, as I already said, working in teams and promoting this idea of collaborative work also. So working together, it's not that all relies on the hands of researchers. That's asking too much. So there has to be these coalitions, knowledge coalitions, providing training already in all research careers. I think training in communication and other aspects, politics, policies, is important. And then I would go back to what was mentioned earlier in the very opening talk, which is the assessment. I think assessment has to change. And this can be done by the funding agencies, by the reward system, and at the institutional level, national level, etc. So those will be my three points.
Okay, and we're going to try one more question before we go back to the main session. But before I ask that question, I would just draw everybody's attention next week to this is EU Green Week, which starts on Monday, and it's launched from an event in Finland, where the European Environment Commissioner will be talking about a roadmap to zero pollution for Europe. But the launch event is centered around the whole concept of open science and citizen science. So you may find it useful to register and listen in to the opening events on Monday, and you can find all the details on EU Green Week. The other one I'd share with you is a researcher that I listened to in Australia who researched bushfires. Strange topic to work on, but he did bushfire research for 10 years and presented all the work to the Australian government, and he made a lovely statement. He said, I naively expected the government to take account of my work and the outputs from my research. And then when the fires happened in Australia, if you remember the bushfires in Australia about a year or so ago, he came back on and said, nobody listened. And the reason, of course, is that it was research that was done in a bubble. It was not open research. It was not research where he was engaged with the community, and it wasn't driving change. And all the things we've listened to today about reaching out are about making better use of the research that everybody does. So on that basis, the question I was going to ask was one that came, and I've lost it now. Let me find it. And it's about how do we best align expectations between all involved stakeholders when involving citizens, researchers, policymakers, and the like. How do we make sure that they're not disappointed by the whole process that they go through, that the industrialists don't come back and say, well, that open science, that citizen science was a nice idea, but it didn't work. How do we get the expectations set correctly so that people come away from these experiences supportive and driving further change? And I would say the Greco experience, certainly the open cafe one that was run here in the UK, was very positive. All the people involved went away very positive about the research work, felt they'd been listened to, and were enthusiastic about what the outcomes were going to be. So, okay, I think we need to get back to the main session.